House Democrats, we believe in a woman's freedom to make her own reproductive health care decisions. And we strongly oppose any effort by extreme MAGA Republicans to criminalize abortion care, impose a nationwide ban, target women and physicians and medical professionals across the country, and try to impose government mandated pregnancies, even in instances where there's been rape or incest. Freedom is under assault by the extreme MAGA Republicans, and ground zero at the moment is in Florida, where there is a ban that will impact millions of women in the state of Florida and throughout the Deep South. Because up until this point, Florida was perhaps the only state in the southeastern part of the country where a woman could seek reproductive health care. Freedom is under assault. House Democrats are defending it. Extreme MAGA Republicans are determined to undermine it. And Donald Trump and everyone who blindly follows him are responsible for what has taken place in this country as a result of the fall of Roe v. Wade and the attacks on freedom that have been underway ever since. Freedom under assault in America, freedom under assault across the world, particularly in Ukraine, which is why it was so critically important that we worked together to get the national security legislation that was bipartisan and comprehensive over the finish line and defeated the pro-Putin Republicans who were determined to undermine America's national security, undermine freedom and democracy throughout the world, and undermine American leadership in a way that would have hurt the safety and security of the American people, perhaps for decades to come, if Vladimir Putin and Russian aggression was allowed to prevail. Freedom under assault in America, freedom under assault throughout the world. Freedom will be on the ballot in November. Questions?
I know that as much as members of your caucus have said that they would help Johnson out of a motion to vacate scenario, you also heard earlier this week from members of your caucus saying, hey, don't you remember this guy as the architect of the January 6th committee, all of that. I mean, how do you make the case when Americans see the motion to table, and I get that it's a distinction, but you guys come in and save the speaker's job?
My statement on this issue speaks for itself. The member who you are referencing is a very distinguished member of the House Democratic Caucus, who in those very remarks made clear that she also is a team player. And you can ask her directly what that means in terms of how she ultimately decides to vote. We've made clear this is a vote of conscience, a procedural vote on a motion to table, but also a vote of conscience that every single member of the House Democratic Caucus will make a decision on based on their assessment of the situation. Catherine Clark, Pete Aguilar, and myself, joined by many others, have taken the position that it's time to end this chapter of pro-Putin obstruction amongst the extreme MAGA Republican wing on the other side of the aisle, and we're prepared to do just that.
Leader.
We'll go to this side.
Congressman Green said she might force
We'll take it one step at a time.
Leader. Thank you. Just two questions. Number one, are you going to condemn the comments made by your colleague, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar? She called Jewish students, at least some of them, pro-genocide. I don't know if those are words that you would use yourself. And then number two, will you commend the actions of the NYPD about what they did last night in Columbia University?
As far as I can tell, the efforts by the NYPD were thorough, professional, and they exercised a degree of calm in a very tense situation that should be commended. With respect to any comments that have been made by Representative Omar, my policy has always been, until I've had an opportunity to talk specifically to that member, I'm going to refrain from making any public comment. My position on the conflict between Israel and Hamas is clear. Israel is fighting a war of necessity. They have to decisively defeat Hamas, who brutally attacked the Israeli people on October 7th. Hamas must be decisively defeated. We have to do everything possible to free the hostages, and at the same time make sure that we are surging humanitarian assistance into Gaza so we can help out Palestinian civilians who are in harm's way through no fault of their own.
When will you talk to her, Leader?
Thank you.
Mr. Leader, Ralph Norman posited the other day that there must be some reason Democrats are treating Johnson differently than McCarthy. He was like, why would they do that unless there was a quid pro quo? What do you see as the difference between McCarthy and Johnson in this situation? And also, just on a purely schadenfreude basis, how much are you Democrats enjoying seeing Republicans in disarray like this?
We're going to continue to keep the focus on getting things done for the American people and delivering real results on their behalf. With respect to the decision that was collectively made on October 3rd and the decision that has been made in connection with the current motion to vacate, Catherine Clark, Pete Aguilar, and myself issued a very thorough statement on October 3rd, laying out our rationale as to why we would vote against a motion to table in the prior instance. And we've also articulated in a very thorough way our rationale for why we've taken a different position at this point in time.
Moving on to the agenda, approaching into 2025 appropriations. How are discussions with Republicans on the top line? Are you going to adhere to the debt ceiling agreement? Is there some position not to do that? What's your set?
It remains our position that the top line spending number has to be the number that was agreed upon in the Bipartisan Fiscal Responsibility Act that was passed by the House and the Senate and signed into law by President Joe Biden. Nothing less than that will ever be acceptable to us as House Democrats.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. You talked about your statement, again, back to the motion to vacate with the other leaders, and together, the three of you said you want to sort of turn the page on the chaos. Can you tell us a little bit what that looks like? Are you in talks with Speaker Johnson or with other Republicans on what sort of post-chaos might look like? Are there shared goals? Is this a coalition government? What does it look like?
Our focus right now is on the three important things substantively that are in front of us, which relate to 1, FAA reauthorization, 2, the Farm Bill, and 3, making sure we fund the government in a manner that takes care of the needs of the American people in advance of the fiscal year 2025 deadline. From the very beginning of this Congress, House Republicans have visited chaos, dysfunction, and extremism on the American people. Marjorie Taylor Greene is the star of the show. The show is called Republicans Gone Wild. It is undermining the well-being of the American people and preventing us from delivering real and meaningful results on the issues that matter. House Republicans are either unwilling or unable to get Marjorie Taylor Greene and the extreme MAGA Republicans under control, and so it's going to take a bipartisan coalition and partnership to accomplish that objective. We need more common sense in Washington, D.C., and less chaos. The Republicans have done nothing but deliver chaos. We're in the common sense business. Second row.
Are you going to vote for the anti-Semitism bill that's supposed to come to the floor later today? And how wide do you expect Democratic support for that to be?
In terms of the second part of the question, you've got to ask Catherine Clark. I do intend to support the resolution. That will be before the floor. And my view of the situation is this. There is a troubling and disturbing rise in anti-Semitism in the United States of America that existed prior to October 7th and has been exacerbated since October 7th. We should be doing everything possible in a serious and sensible way to combat anti-Semitism, to crush anti-Semitism, to bury it in the ground and make sure that it can never rise again. Combating anti-Semitism is not a Democratic issue or a Republican issue. It should be an American issue. And we should be working together to confront anti-Semitism and all other forms of racism and hatred and xenophobia in America and throughout the world.
Do you plan to visit Columbia University or any of the universities that are in unrest right now?
I have no current plans to do that. We'll go to that.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. The Biden administration yesterday reclassified cannabis. Leader Schumer, Ford Booker, Senator Wyden reintroduced their legislation to deschedule cannabis. I'm curious about your thoughts of the ramifications of the Biden administration's decision yesterday for not only New York but the country, and do you support the legislation that the senators reintroduced today?
I support the legislation introduced by the senators and have been long involved in the effort to try to deschedule marijuana and break the back of the prison industrial complex and mass incarceration in the United States of America. It was an honor for me to be part of helping to make sure that the First Step Act was ushered into law, which was done in a bipartisan way with Democrats and Republicans, the left, the right, progressives, and conservatives working with the prior administration to get meaningful criminal justice reform done for the first time in decades and begin to try and reverse the adverse impact on mass incarceration, which affects many communities across the country, including those that I was raised in central Brooklyn. The effort taken by the Biden administration was impactful and another step in the right direction that we should build upon legislatively. Thanks. I'll go to the back and then we'll come back up to the front. Thanks. You-
Follow up on on some of the comments on anti-Semitism. House Republicans yesterday announced they're going to be expanding their investigations on campus anti-Semitism. Obviously, there's the vote today. If Democrats were in the majority, what steps would you all be taking in response to what's been happening on campuses?
It's a great question. The Biden administration put forth a comprehensive report and series of recommendations in May of 2023 designed to aggressively combat the rise of anti-Semitism in the United States of America. Representative Kathy Manning has introduced bipartisan legislation that is designed to bring many of those recommendations to life in order to get to a better place in the United States of America. And it is my hope that Representative Manning's legislation will receive an up or down vote in the next few weeks before we leave town in advance of Memorial Day. It's bipartisan legislation. Kathy Manning's legislation has the support of the Anti-Defamation League. It has the support of AJC. It has the support of a variety of different Jewish organizations. And no one has been more of a leader throughout her professional career in dealing with these challenges than Representative Manning. And so I'd like to see her legislation brought to the floor. We'll go, sorry.
Tomorrow, many members will travel for the funeral of the late Don Payne. Moving forward with that seat, do you have any intel on when that seat might be filled? Is that looking to the next Congress? Do you imagine a representative will be elected between now and November?
Yeah, we haven't had those conversations because we're still in the process of both mourning the loss of a great member of Congress and a classmate of mine, Representative Donald Payne Jr., as well as celebrating his life, which has been done throughout the week in different ways, including on the House floor yesterday in a special order hour led by the Congressional Black Caucus and the leadership of Assistant Democratic Leader Joe Neguse. Representative Payne Jr. will lie in state today at the Essex County Courthouse. And then dozens of members are going to travel to Newark, New Jersey tomorrow morning to pay our honor and respect to Representative Payne. Until that happens, we've given zero thought to what comes next in the 10th Congressional District of New Jersey. Thanks. Second row.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. So earlier on, you said that you commended the way the NYPD handled the unrest at Columbia University's campus. And I wanted to know, do you think that their use of force was appropriate? And are you at all worried that in the future, police brutality cases against peaceful protesters might become a thing?
I didn't see the NYPD use excessive force yesterday.
A bit of a two-parter, just taking a broader look at these protests. I mean, what do you make of the protests against Israel happening on college campuses that we've been seeing recently?
The First Amendment is an important part of the fabric of America. Peaceful protest is an important part of the fabric of America. Civil disobedience that is nonviolent is an important part of the fabric of America. But we shouldn't see any protest ever veer into threatening the safety and security of others, into anti-Semitism or racism or xenophobia or Islamophobia, or anything that is inconsistent with the fact that America is a gorgeous mosaic of people of different races, religions, and ethnicities, and that is what makes us an incredibly strong nation and different from any other nation in the world.
Bit of a follow-up then.
Thank you, Leader. Do you believe that colleges and universities should lose their federal funding if they have been found to not be cracking down on anti-Semitism?
I haven't taken a look at any specific proposal in that regard, but we'll have a conversation about the best way for colleges and universities to respond at the appropriate point. I can say that with respect to the most recent appropriations bill, House Democrats wanted to increase funding for the Office of Civil Rights of the Department of Education, which is the office charged with the responsibility of making sure that no student is targeted in any way because of their race, their religion, or their ethnicity. House Republicans wanted to slash and burn the Office of Civil Rights of the Department of Education by 25%. And ultimately, it was House Democrats led by Rosa DeLauro that were able to restore the proposed extreme MAGA Republican cut that would have adversely impacted the ability of the Department of Education to combat anti-Semitism and all other forms of hatred on college campuses. We don't need rhetoric from some of my Republican colleagues. We need real action.
Thank you, Speaker, or Leader. There were repeat clashes last night at UCLA between protesters and counter-protesters, and for hours, there were no police to be found. I'm just wondering, do you have any response to what was going on at UCLA last night and the police response or lack thereof?
Yeah, I have not had the opportunity to take a look at what happened on the UCLA campus. Thank you.
I know this has been alluded to that some members have visited campuses. I mean, what is your message to Democratic lawmakers who have gone in and supported sort of the demonstrators at Columbia or other campuses?
I don't have a message one way or the other. Thanks. Thank you, everyone. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
One last question.
Your caucus is likely to provide the votes to help keep Speaker Johnson in power next week. Do you feel like this gives you a stronger hand heading into these appropriations negotiations?
From the very beginning of this Congress, as House Democrats, we have made clear that we will find bipartisan common ground with our Republican colleagues on any issue, whenever and wherever possible, in order to deliver real results for the American people. We have repeatedly done it throughout this entire Congress, having to overcome Republican chaos, dysfunction, and extremism that began during the very beginning of this Congress, when it took 15 different votes before the Congress could begin, and a loaded gun was handed over to some of the more extreme elements of the House Republican Conference in order to even get started. This is what the American people have faced from the very beginning of this Congress. And we have decided that we are going to approach our jobs maturely, to find common ground whenever possible, to deliver real results for the American people, to protect their health, safety, security, and economic well-being, while at the same time pushing back against Republican MAGA extremism whenever necessary. That has been the blueprint that we followed throughout the entirety of the 118th Congress, and I expect that's going to continue until the extremists are vacated from the majority during the first Tuesday in November. Thank you.